I was watching an interview with Dave Allen the other day, and he said something interesting. And I'm not saying I agree or disagree necessarily. It was just interesting. He said that in his view, Tyson Fury is actually a fresher fighter than Dillian Whyte. And it got me thinking, because there's been a lot of people over the past few weeks who have been talking about the punishment that Tyson Fury took in the third Deontay Wilder fight and the first fight, but more the third fight because it was most recent. And they were speculating about how this could affect Tyson Fury moving forward. Some people believe that Tyson Fury has already peaked and that the punishment that he took in the Wilder fight will accelerate his deterioration. But those same people are not really talking about the possibility that Dillian Whyte has already peaked and how much of an effect all the punishment he's taken in his career is going to have on him. Now, Dave Allen, of course, is a former Dillian Whyte opponent. He's also sparred Dillian Whyte. He's well known in the gyms on the heavyweight circuit in the UK, sparred Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, and many other people. Has he heard something, or has he heard some things about what's going on with Dillian Whyte in sparring? Because we know Dillian Whyte is one of these fighters who loves to spar hard. I mean, he goes in sparring. He is no holding back with Dillian Whyte. He likes to just lay it all hang out. And I've been thinking about what kind of effect that's going to have on Alan Babbage as well, because I saw some clip of Dillian Whyte sparring Babbage, and it was brutal sparring. And at the end of the spar, Dillian Whyte and Babbage were like staring at each other, and I think Dillian Whyte shoved Babbage. That's the kind of environment that Dillian Whyte exists in the gym. And I was thinking, is this going to harm Babbage? Do you know what I mean? Him getting in these constant wars in the gym with Dillian Whyte, taking all these big shots. Is that going to start affecting his punch resistance? Did we see that in Alan Babbage's last fight? Possibly. But perhaps that's a subject for another video. But with regards to Dillian Whyte, again, has Dave Allen heard things? Is Dillian Whyte getting hurt in sparring? Is he getting dropped in sparring? I remember Alan Babbage actually alluded to him, I don't know, buzzing Dillian Whyte, hurting Dillian Whyte occasionally in sparring. He said something like that in an interview. He said, even with Dillian sometimes, because he said he was hurting big guys in sparring, and he said, even with Dillian sometimes. So I'm thinking, again, is Dave Allen heard stuff? Is Dillian Whyte deteriorating even in the gym in terms of punch resistance and getting caught more and getting hurt more? Teddy Atlas has raised this as an issue for Dillian Whyte. I've raised it as an issue for a long time now. The past couple years, I've been talking about how Dillian Whyte's punch resistance seems to be deteriorating. Of course, he was knocked out by AJ. He had those 2 tough fights with Derek Chisora. He was dropped and hurt bad by Joseph Parker. He was dropped by Oscar Rivas. He was hurt by Robert Helenius. He was hurt by Marius Wack. And that was supposed to be a tune-up fight. I mean, you look at Marius Wack, he was dominated by Martin Bakole. He was dominated by Hughie Fury. Wasn't he also dominated and stopped by Jarrell Miller? He was stopped by Alexander Povetkin many years ago. These guys weren't knocking him out, obviously. Marius Wack has got an iron jaw. He's never been down, but he's been getting stopped. He's been retired on his stool a few times. And obviously, I'm well aware that Dillian Whyte was not in shape when he fought Marius Wack. The other guys who I've mentioned were certainly better prepared than Dillian Whyte was when they faced Wack. But nonetheless, this is part of a pattern with Dillian Whyte where he keeps getting hurt consistently. And again, Teddy Atlas highlighted this as a problem. Teddy Atlas likes Dillian Whyte. Teddy Atlas has had Dillian Whyte on his podcast. So this is not about hating on Whyte or anything like this. It's just about looking at the situation objectively and saying, okay, this guy is getting hurt a bit too much for my liking. If you're a Dillian Whyte fan, doesn't it make you feel uncomfortable that he gets hurt this much, this consistently? And you could say, well, he's been fighting top level opposition and this is what happens. You can't make omelet without breaking an egg. You're going to get hurt when you're going in there with all these big punches all the time. I mean, even someone like Robert Helenius, who hurt Dillian Whyte, is a puncher. No doubt about it. That guy can crack. But at the same time, it's not just the fact that he's getting hurt. It's the fact that he's getting caught. That's another thing, again, Teddy Atlas pointed out, is that why would you get caught with the kind of shot that can hurt you consistently fight after fight after fight? There's a problem there, you know? And we don't know what neurological effect that could have had on Dillian Whyte by now. We didn't get to find out in the Povetkin rematch because he didn't get hit in the Povetkin rematch. He passed the test as far as the psychological effect that the knockout defeat could have had on him. With flying colors, he passed that test. But the neurological effect, we won't know until we see Dillian Whyte get hit properly. So again, it's just food for thought. I'm not saying that I agree with Dave Allen that Tyson Fury is the fresher fighter. necessarily. If you wanted to entertain the possibility, you could look at the fact that Tyson Fury has had, what was it, a 2 or 3 year hiatus in the middle of his career where he wasn't in the ring taking punches. But on the flip side of that, you could say, well, okay, he wasn't taking punishment in terms of punches during that period of his career, but he was taking punishment in terms of his lifestyle, in terms of drinking, drugs, massive weight gain and then weight loss, and all this takes a toll on your body. And I 100% agree with that. It does take a toll on your body. And Tyson Fury, of course, has been down and been in tough fights himself. He was in life and death battles with John McDermott early on in his career. He was dropped heavily by Nevin Pikage and Steve Cunningham. He was dropped by Deontay Wilder, of course, in the first fight and in the third fight. And all of this is definitely putting miles on Tyson Fury's clock. So it's a matter of who is fresher at this point. It's not a case of one guy is fresh and the other guy, is shop worn. No, both guys are potentially shop worn. It's just who's more shop worn. And in the view of Dave Allen, it's actually Dillian Whyte. He seems to think that Dillian Whyte has already peaked a while ago, maybe a few years ago. But again, some people would say that about Tyson Fury. They think that he actually peaked a few years ago. So it's interesting food for thought. I'm not coming down on one side or the other. I just thought I'd throw it out there for you guys to contemplate as well. Have a think about it. Will it influence who you're going to pick for this fight? Tyson Fury versus Dillian Whyte. Will it change your mind? Because again, some people might have been thinking, yeah, Tyson Fury's taking loads of punishment in his last fight against Wilder, and overlooking the fact that Dillian Whyte's taking plenty of punishment too. His fight before last, he was knocked out cold. You know what I mean? And getting knocked out cold, I mean, is it as bad as being in a 12-round beatdown or an 8 or 10-round beatdown? Perhaps not, but if you speak to Michael Venom Page, for example, he'll tell you the kind of effects that a one-punch knockout can have neurologically. Michael Venom Page was having all kinds of symptoms from his knockout against, what's the guy called, Lima in Bellator? Yeah, just from one shot, Michael Venom Page was having symptoms from that knockout, from that concussion that went on for months. You know what I mean? So you don't know. And then Dillian Whyte has had that kind of knockout, right? Suffered that kind of knockout. And then after a couple months, he's back in the ring training and sparring for the rematch. Do you know what I mean? It's like compounding the potential issues. And again, we didn't find out if there are any issues there, neurological issues for Dillian Whyte, because he never got hit in the Povetkin rematch. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when Dillian Whyte does get hit clean by Tyson Fury. Of course, it's also going to be interesting to see what happens if Dillian Whyte lands his own shot on Fury and see how Fury reacts. It's an interesting fight, full stop. That's why we're looking forward to it, right? Because there are certain questions here about how motivated Tyson Fury could be. You know, Fury's family has always said that the only person who can beat Tyson is Tyson himself. And that's basically a way of saying that Tyson is not always the most consistent guy psychologically. And he isn't. He's an erratic character. And erratic characters like that struggle with consistency in the ring. They struggle to string together a series of impressive performances. There's usually an incredible performance followed by mediocre performance, followed by a shocking performance, and then another incredible performance. This is how fighters like Tyson Fury tend to be. And I think that's why Fury, I think he's cognizant of this. I think his team are cognizant of this, which is why they're careful about who they put him in the ring with and when. You know, I don't think they would have fought Dillian Whyte in a voluntary defense, to be honest with you. I think the only way this fight was ever going to happen is via a mandatory. I don't think that they would have picked it. Not that they're scared of Dillian Whyte or anything like that, but I think they're cognizant of how inconsistent Tyson Fury can be. I'm sure they believe that on Fury's best day, there's not a man alive that can beat him. But I also believe that they think that on Tyson Fury's worst day, there are several people that could beat him. I suspect that they think that, you know, that on Tyson Fury's worst day, there are people in the heavyweight division that do stand a chance of beating him. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Is Tyson Fury the fresher fighter than Dillian Whyte? Do you agree with Dave Allen on that or not? Let me know.